Good morning to you from the nation's capital, Nairobi, and many thanks for joining us on the broadcast on this 17th day of January 2021. This Sunday, the dust is yet to settle on the quick elevation of Anne Kananu Mwenda to the position of Nairobi Deputy Governor Friday. There are congratulatory messages, but also there are legal minds quoting Section 2D of the County Governments Act, saying that a deputy governor cannot assume office without the appointment seal of an elected governor. So should the new DG settle in just yet? Meanwhile, this past week, there were rejoinders to President Uhuru Kenyatta's remarks over the role of tribal permutations on the presidency. ODM leader Raila Odinga proposing or supporting a rotational presidency and stating why it would work in Kenya. We'll get into that. And Chief Justice Emeritus David Kenani Maraga finally handed over the instruments of power to Deputy Chief Justice, now acting CJ, Philomena Mbete Mwilu. We'll go through some of Maraga's remarks from his exit interview, including why President Kenyatta should be impeached. Stand by to call in studio with your views, comments, and questions. Have the final say. This is Inside Politics, Kenya's premier Sunday morning political broadcast, where, as always, we dissect the biggest political and policy issues in the Republic. I am Ben KITILI. Let's get right into it. Barely 24 hours since Anne Kananu Mwenda was sworn in as Nairobi Deputy Governor, some ODM leaders are already laying claim to the Deputy Governor position should she become the governor. This coming at a time the City Hall insiders are hinting at the possibility of the process to make Kananu governor kicking off as soon as tomorrow. Let's begin with KTN's Mark Namaswa with the details.
I, Anne Kananu Mwenda.
It has only been a matter of hours since Anne Kananu was sworn in as Nairobi County Deputy Governor. But even before the ink on her oath could dry, political maneuvers have already begun, with a section of ODM party legislators saying that should she ascend to the governorship, ODM should be given the deputy governor's slot.
After she's been sworn in as a governor, the deputy governor position, it is my belief, would be the handshake candidate. And the handshake candidate, in my small mind, when I think, comes from Nyanza.
Political parties such as the Third Way Alliance, which had fronted Miguna as its candidate, still reeling from Friday's events.
If you guys were ready for election and you prepared and you asked your candidates to submit their names for the primaries, why is it that when Miguna enters the race, you chicken out?
On its part, Paul's body, IEBC, remains mum, with its calendar for Nairobi by-election still stating February 18th as the election date. By-election candidates are expected to submit nomination papers to the returning officer next week on January 18th and 19th, between 8 a.m. and 12 p.m., then between 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. The question, however, remains, with the seat effectively having been filled, what will these IEBC activities be geared towards?
We will need to test the law to know whether upon her swearing in as deputy governor, whether the speaker's acting as governor is still tenable, because the speaker has only been acting governor for reason that there was a deputy speaker.
The speed at which Kananu was vetted, cleared and sworn in has also set a record in legal and political circles.
There is nowhere in law says that the deputy governor should be sworn in after being vetted. The law is not clear about it.
And for many political players, the Nairobi race now seems like it was so close, yet so far away.
Ilikuwa wakati wa kuhakikisha kwamba baada ya siku 60 wananchi wa Nairobi wameenda katika uchaguzi na kumchagua gavana ambaye wanampenda.
Acting Governor Honorable Ben Mutura was a caretaker of 60 days. But now the same has been suspended. There is no by-election, meaning there will be no assumption of a new governor.
City Hall insiders now say the process of getting Anne Kananu to ascend to position of governor might start as soon as Monday next week, with acting Governor Ben Mutura slated to step back into his former role as a speaker. Mark Namaswa, KTN News.
All right, let's get into into this, and joining me in studio to help me put some perspective into these issues, starting with Nairobi, is Javas Bigambo, political analyst. We also joined in the show today by Cherotich Sei, humanitarian and development consultant, as is lawyer and political strategist Kipchumba Karori. We'll also be joined in studio this morning by lawyer Ishmael Nyaribo. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me as always. Welcome to the broadcast. Let me begin with you, Javas. Were you surprised by the speed with which Anne Kananu Mwenda's elevation or confirmation to be the Nairobi deputy governor was done on Friday?
Well, thank you, Ben. I was surprised by very many things. One, by the fact that the vetting committee of the county assembly did its work expeditiously, and thereafter, the speed with which the county assembly approved Anne Kananu, and thereafter being sworn in. It has not been noted on record that that vetting committee, after the vetting, wrote a very detailed report about its satisfaction or otherwise, in this case satisfaction, of the candidate who was being vetted, Anne Mwenda, and then the extent to which, and if at all it's on record, that the county assembly received the report of that committee and discussed that committee and approved this candidate, and therefore presented her or had her ready to be sworn in as deputy governor. The other, of course, the other critical political legal issues that are related to this fact that are very surprising. One, there is, in my understanding and critical review of the facts, that there is a zealous effort on the part of political operatives in this country and at the highest level to assail, to overthrow, to spit on the Constitution of Kenya 2010. And here I'm speaking about overthrowing the provisions of the Constitution with regard to Article 182 of the Constitution, Sub-Article 2, Article 182, Sub-Article 4. For example, if at all, for instance, it provides in Article 182, Sub-Article 4 that when there is a vacancy in the office of the governor, and the deputy governor is incapable of holding that office, which means also unavailable to assume such mandate, the Speaker of the County Assembly shall assume office in acting capacity as governor. The fact that Speaker Mutura was sworn in as acting governor then also means that there was, of course, no governor. There was no capable acting governor available to assume office as governor, as acting governor in the capacity. Hence, the position of Mutura taking up as acting governor. The law cannot be read in reverse. For instance, when you look at Article 259, Sub-Article 1 of the Constitution, which is very purposive, that the Constitution of Kenya 2010 should be interpreted in a manner that promotes the values of this Constitution, good governance, that promotes the rule of law. And here we see that the purposive reading and objective reading of the provisions of the Constitution, including the County Government Act, is such that the law is not being read clearly in such a manner as to promote good governance and even the essence of the Constitution of Kenya 2010 as provided for in Article 259. Now here what we are saying is that I'm reading so much of political drive and a motive to avoid going to the by-election. The other thing is this, that the IBC issued a gazette notice, all right, which is legal. That gazette notice is still in its operation. How come then should we be talking about Anne Mwenda having been sworn in as deputy governor, to me, I think, against the law, then being assumed that, within the next few days, she's going to assume office as governor, being sworn in office as governor, without having been appointed formally by a sitting governor in office. There is so much of political machinations in all this.
Thank you for laying that background for us, Javas. Let me bring in, we have quite a number of lawyers on the program this morning. Kipchumba, what Javas is saying has only been, uttered by the Third Way Alliance. We have not seen anybody else from the political class coming out to say there are inconsistencies, with the laws. Do you think there have been illegalities? We have seen Kenyans, gasping at some of these things, saying Nairobi, kona wenyewe, serikali, kona wenyewe, such things. Do you think there have been illegalities that have been committed in the run-up to the swearing-in of the DG, who is set to become the next Nairobi governor?
Ben Kitili, thank you. I think I begin by noting that our democracy, in normal democracies, the convergence between the law and politics, it is the law that should subsist. But because of the nature of our democracy, when the law and politics converge, it is politics that takes the cue of the day. Whatever has happened in Nairobi is not only a sacrilege on the Constitution of Kenya, but it is a debauchery of due process. You have a gazette notice that has not been revoked by a court of law. You have so much legal and constitutional debauchery going on within the city hall. Ben, let us start from the beginning, and let me paint a picture to our viewers by saying this. If today I propose to a lady, and I give them a proposal ring, and then in the process I die, how can the registrar of marriages issue my would-be spouse with a certificate of marriage? Married to who? That is what is happening in Nairobi. You cannot, for example, the person who ought to have gazetted Anne Kananu is the IBC. And it is through that gazette notice will have been, on a normal day, the invitation upon which the judge will have been invited to come and preside over. But look at it, what happened. We are looking at a process that when Article 182 was activated and Ben Mutura was sworn in as the acting governor,
yes,
the only way out of this would have been in a normal way. When you read Article 182 and you read the County Government Act, the normal way, there are only two ways to stop an election, a by-election in Nairobi. One is where the impeachment of Governor Mike Sonko is quashed by a court of law. And secondly, the other only way of us to get out of this would have been for the election to happen, and on the 60th day, the newly elected governor will have come in. Then why will the Constitution take us to this kind of trend? Is because after what we are having in this country is what we call a participatory democracy. This is a democracy whereby the sovereign will of the people, now because we cannot, or the people cannot exercise their sovereign will to run Nairobi,
yes,
we delegate that through an election. And when the people running Nairobi, the speaker is handicapped in that he doesn't have the sovereign will of the people of Nairobi. And that will is the Kananu will lack.
So, Bwana Wakili, now you say, we're saying all that, but we are here now. So what next?
Yes. I think what we are doing, we are first of all been in a legal quagmire and in a constitutional mess. What we need is for the Supreme Court to interpret for us what Parliament meant in drafting Section 32D of the County Government Act. Because it is through that act, the act states clearly that upon being vetted and the assembly passing a deputy governor nominee, he must be appointed by a governor. But the other mess also, Ben Kitili, which we are in, is the mess that at what point will Anne Kananu take over as a governor? Because we have Mutura already in place. And two, the gazette notice gazetting the election, the by-election in Nairobi, has not been revoked. It's still in force. What has just happened, the election has been suspended. The other point is this: who gazetted Anne Kananu to be sworn in? Well, it is IBC who gazettes that person to be sworn in. The other point that I will ask is this: why the choreography was so keen that the process of vetting a deputy governor candidate is ordinarily 14 days. But for Nairobi, it took a day. Those are some of the questions we'll be asking. But at the end of the day,
yes,
the Supreme Court must come and interpret Section 332D so that we can regain the supremacy of the Constitution and avoid running on what we call constitutions without constitutionalism.
Thank you, Bwana Akili. Cherotich, let me bring you into this conversation. Thank you for joining us for the first time this year. Anne Kananu Mwenda, sworn in as Nairobi Deputy Governor Friday, effectively the next governor of the county, number 047. That process, we understand, is set to begin tomorrow morning, Monday morning. Your thoughts?
Thank you, Ben. Good to see all of you, and I hope it's not too late to say Happy New Year to all the viewers. You know, I've listened to my brothers who have explained really the legal and constitutional issues at play here. For me, I want to take our viewers to, for example, motherland slums that I tweeted about earlier on this week, and I thank KTN for covering the story. You know, if we boil it down to what this means for the residents of county number 47, it simply means that this is a continuation of the impunity and disobedience to the Constitution of Kenya that has resulted in the erosion of lives and livelihoods of people in Nairobi City. What we are seeing, and my brothers have clearly described it, is the continued disobedience. The Constitution has been under threat. We have a regime that is panicking and scrambling, and you can see them beginning to unravel at the seams, because the speed with which the Constitution is constantly being disrespected and disobeyed is indicative of a kind of panic, a scramble to hold on. And if you think back, Ben, maybe it was last year or even the year before last, 2019, where I spoke about the very first iteration of the BBI report that suggested the removal of Nairobi as a county. This is part of the steady march towards the elimination of Nairobi as county number 47 in favor of the Nairobi Metropolitan Services. Look, Major General Badi might be a very good gentleman, and I think maybe he is doing his best under the orders that he has been given, and he follows instructions, yes, as a military man. But what we are seeing, Ben, really is a continued disrespect and a movement towards a particular space where the political class, a specific family within the political class, wishes to see Nairobi. And this is all revolving around Northland City. And when you see the consolidation of power, the rushing, nobody wants Miguna. Nobody wants Miguna to clean up the cartels in Nairobi. Why? Because he will begin to unpick the systematic siege under which Nairobians live and say, no, we deserve to have devolution that works for us, for example. And so what you're just seeing with Anne Kananu rushing in, all the quagmire that we're in, and the chaos is to create a permanent state of confusion. But ultimately, it is the residents of Nairobi who will suffer. It is those people who are being chased for not having permits. It is those of us struggling under heavy taxes, the traffic, the garbage, the lack of water, the cartels running this city. This is deliberate. And so what we see is more of the same. And I believe truly that if, as Kenyans, we don't wake up and say enough disobedience to the Constitution of Kenya, we will continue to see this. This is a slippery slope in terms of the erosion of the rule of law.
Ishmael Nyaribo, what we are seeing, a summary of what the other panelists have said, but what we are seeing in Nairobi is a deputy governor whose appointment, as legal minds are saying, will not be, sealed by a sitting or an elected governor. We are seeing a speaker of the county of Nairobi who is the acting governor. We are seeing the Nairobi Metropolitan Services running the affairs of Nairobi, having held, got into an agreement with a governor who's not in office anymore, who's been, impeached. Where is the will of the people in all this, in running of things at City Hall?
Thank you, Ben, and thank you so much for inviting me to your show. Ben, where did the rain start beating us then? As far as Nairobi politics and leadership and administration is concerned.
Yes.
Where did the problems begin? I've had my colleagues commentating about Miguna coming to clean up the city. Where did these problems come in? And by the way, what are the express provisions of the Constitution of Kenya about such a situation that was not envisaged when the drafters of our Constitution were writing it? You see, before I comment about the people of Nairobi's rights, what has the Supreme Court said about the Constitution, Article 180, 182, 181? In the Supreme Court opinion moved by the Speaker of the County Assembly of Embu in 2018, Justice Lenaula and his team have clearly said that the Constitution is actually silent about a situation like the one we now have in Nairobi. It is not expressly saying that if the Speaker of the National Assembly is holding office for 60 days, and yet the governor of Nairobi County had actually proposed a party whom Kipchumba is referring to a proposal by some gentleman, that example. The Constitution is not clear on that, and therefore it remains a completely political issue, where now the leadership in Nairobi and the national leadership must come together and exactly find out what actually is supposed to be done so that the people of Nairobi themselves get services. If you look at that opinion I've mentioned, the judges of the Supreme Court are saying that a governor, when in office, should within 14 days appoint or nominate his deputy. Why did Sonko live in Nairobi for all over 2 years without appointing a deputy? And you see our good commentators, legal minds in this country, are not actually addressing that. So that is a backlog problem we have in this country, where you go into office, you governed by impunity, and when your actions now bring mess in the country, now you want everybody to take recourse to what does the law say, so that we maintain the status quo of wrongdoing. So to me, Ben, if you ask me, yes, where are the people represented? The people of Nairobi are now represented by a deputy governor. What will happen with the notice by IEBC, we still do not know. IEBC could go to court also and seek interpretation on what happens about their notice. There are lawyers, Lawyer Society of Kenya has confirmed they will be in court, so that it is not the process which is misunderstood to be fault, so that it's not allowed to continue. Well, that again will take another dimension altogether, what the courts will say. But as far as the people of Nairobi are concerned, Ben, they must get service, and they are getting that service, yes.
Let me ask you this, you're a lawyer. Do you think there has been any inconsistencies with the law in as far as things have been done in the Nairobi, in the Sonko impeachment and the elevation of the DG, and all those things that have been raised in court in petitions and have been thrown out by the courts, and those courts, those judges, some of those judges have been criticized by some of your learned colleagues. Do you think there have been any illegalities committed?
Yes, 100%. I think that there were illegalities. I think that when the judge was petitioned to withdraw this petition by Ogada and the team in the City Hall, the judge ought to have protected citizens and Nairobians especially by saying, let not the process continue. Let's now go back to the IEBC and see if elections can be held in 60 days. The judge could have gone to that extent. But again, the judge will tell you he was not moved by the applicants in court. Now, Ben, which brings me to another option, to another proposal. We are today discussing that the law should be amended. The Constitution needs to be amended to take care of such an anomaly. If the Law Society feels that this judge who presided over the installing of the deputy governor the other day, they are already complaining, that the LSK is complaining that he actually broke the law. Who is supposed to check the judges when they are doing such a mess? There is no proposal from either the Law Society or myself or any other group which has been considered and either rejected or allowed. What has the public done. They have suggested that the ombudsman needs to come in to check such abuse of power. We are shooting ourselves on our feet and refusing that even that ombudsman again, as proposed in the Constitution Amendment Bill 2020, is not correct. Now, when you find a citizenry that is actually noticing where the problems are, but they are not coming in to say, we propose that this and that be done, then it is left to us as lawyers, Ben.
All right.
And this is not a lawyer's economy. I can assure you this is a market economy driven by needs and demands. Therefore, we cannot shut the economy or continuation of other business just because we feel academically there is an error over here and it ought to be done like this. I think we must proceed and move on as Nairobians, yes.
Thank you. We are keeping an eye on these issues for you here on KTN News. That process for the newly sworn-in deputy governor to assume office of the governor, we understand is set to begin tomorrow. All these questions that are arising, we shall continue to analyze all of them. The legal questions, is anybody going to go to court? Is the Independent Electoral and Boundaries Commission, IEBC, going to say anything about this? Because as far as we know, they are still planning for a by-election. Will there be a by-election? Probably not. We continue to keep an eye on this developing story for you here in Nairobi. Let's take a quick commercial break here on Inside Politics. When we come back, we shall be talking about the issue of the rotational presidents, which has been backed by ODM leader Raila Odinga, saying it would work in Kenya. It has worked in other places, in other countries. What do you think? Would a rotational presidency work? Stay with us.